Good afternoon. This is Stormcastle Jackson, Stormcastle's Comics and Collectibles. We're going to talk about the best version of the Justice League, the Justice League International. Now, Justice League International was formed after the event of Legends, where the last Justice League was destroyed. A few years prior to the Crisis on Infinite Earths, DC retooled their team of the Justice League. Batman had left to join the outside, had formed the Outsiders. Superman, Flash, and Wonder Woman had left the league, and what was left was Aquaman, Martian Manhunter, who had recently turned into continuity, Elongated Man, and Zatanna. They built a brand new league with 4 new characters: Steel, Vibe, Mara McCabe Vixen, and Gypsy. And to say they weren't popular is they tried. Eventually, Elongated Man eventually Aquaman left. Batman came back, but they just could not get the popularity. In fact, creator George Perez hated the character Vibe. He felt it was a character of Puerto Rican people, and whenever there'd be a crossover or in Crisis Earths, he would minimize the appearance of Vibe, or basically shunt him off the corner, or not even put him in some issues because he disliked the character so much he thought it was disrespectful. After Crisis, DC wanted to kind of put their universe back and put everything back together, so they put a mini-series called Legends out, which was the first appearance of the modern Suicide Squad. And in the process of it, the Justice League was killed. Vibe and Steel are dead. Gypsy went home, and Mara McCabe went off, retired. She was done with being a hero. At the time, Keith Giffen had been petitioning DC editorial about doing Justice League. He'd come in, according to the trade, which I no longer have a copy of, he'd be going, Justice League, in a really weird way. And eventually, one day, the editor said, okay, what do you got? And he pitched together a new story of the things, and it was less said of the big brand adventures, more about who the characters are. Well, when they said go ahead, he went out and they said, and he was given the okay to, first off, Superman and Wonder Woman were both off the table. Superman's books were going one way. Wonder Woman was being recreated by George Perez, and now Flash was Wally West. On the other hand, he was allowed to keep the holdover of Batman, who'd come back, and Martian Manhunter, who was one of the survivors of Justice League Destroyed. Putting together new stuff, they wanted to put new heroes in the forefront. So Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, who was a Charlton hero that DC now owned, was used for importance inside Crisis, was put on the team. Captain Marvel, Shazam, was being given new promise. They put a new origin story out. They were trying to build up. Dr. Fate had a new book. Kent Nelson. He got use of Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, and Black Canary, who has been a stalwart, and Mr. Miracle, who was one of Jack Kirby's creations. They put together a brand new Justice League. It was more about, and it was less of having to do these big overall adventures where they save the world every single time. It was more about the characterization of who these people are, and that was the thing. We see it here. Guy Gardner is sitting in the Hall of Justice. He's monologuing. He sees himself as Sylvester Stallone with a ring, and he has this kind of attitude. And the league shows up, and he gets he immediately acts creepy towards Black Canary. She gets mad at him. He makes a joke about Oberon, Mr. Miracle's assistant, calls him Sneezy. Captain Marvel shows up, and he's like, holy moly, and guys immediately has to mock that. It's, John shows up with Blue Beetle, and John has a moment where he's like looking at the old Justice League, and he's like, he feels lost, and then Guy immediately has to go in, and he's about aggravating. Also, if you notice, in the art, the faces are all well done. And, we're introduced to this character called Maxwell Lord, who we know nothing about. And he's trying to figure out the Justice League problem. Eventually, as they're waiting for Batman to arrive, Guy and Green Lantern get into Guy and Black Canary get into a fight. Guy's like, this is the brush off, Sneezy, and they get into, it gets more and more overboard because, we're seeing behind the hero, we're seeing the kind of the private lives, and eventually we have Dr. Fate and Batman coming in. Batman's like, it's, he feels, there's a reason to be here, and he just comes, the spookiness. They come in and he sees the league, and it's like, it's just like getting children, he put a bunch of children together. Dr. Fate's like, I can rectify this. Batman comes in and just, like, without saying anything, without doing much, he just uses his presence and stops everything. And he looks again, you look at the details in the faces. It's a good story, and I'm not going to go over every little bit of issues. But basically, it's the setup of where the New Justice League comes from. This Dr. Light's here. They get the League gets a signal from just Dr. Light, and they're like, wait a minute, who is she here? And it's Batman is wanting to do it his way, and he gets really more grouchier. But I mean, even with the limited, when you look at the face, the art is amazing, and I don't want to go back down. But basically, it goes that goes out and finds out that they've come here to stop it, and Batman has a plan, and his plan is he wants to show off too, and honestly, it's more about the League trying to figure out who they are, and eventually we get they look more at Dr. Light, and she's like, I was given the signal, and they're like, it's an inferior copy, and they're like, no, it's a superior copy. But as the story progresses, Booster Gold joins. It's more about the characters and how they interact. It's more about their private lives, the way they react to each other, the way they see each other. I mean, it's stories about what is going on behind that we don't normally see, because usually we see the polished heroes. The old Justice League was always this kind of polished thing. The Avengers, over Marvel was a certain way. But this is more like we're getting to see the hijinks and, more and more about, this is the famous One Punch issue. And it's all about the storytelling. There's a lot that happens in, eventually, we get to a breaking point. Guy Gardner goes after Batman. Batman's like, he's like, why don't you leave? And he goes like, Batman's like, he's like, well, why don't you, guy goes, quit treating us like a dog. Batman goes, whoa, when you stop acting like a mongrel. And he's like, that's it, that does it. And he gives the ring to Blue Beetle, and he's like, I'm gonna take you out. And Blue Beetle just chucks the ring over his shoulder, and he doesn't care. And, Batman insults Captain Marvel because he's like, well, and Batman's like, no, guy, something you want to do to me? He's like, I mean, after I break your arms and legs, and he's like, all bark, no bite. And we get this, I bite, and he comes forward, and Batman, one punch, which everybody, in comic history, everybody talks about that. It's one of those great stories. Martian Manhunter and Black Canary come in, and they're like, oh my god, and they're like, is Guy dead? No, we can't be that lucky. And Beetle's just laughing, and Martian Manhunter's like, sorry we're late, Batman, and he goes, but not sorry, it's Black Canary is. But, again, it's more about, you know, it's more about what was going on. They could do so much. They did so much with the artwork. I mean, Bat, you can see Batman's face. He's like, I'm busy. And Oberon says, "Oh, the computer wants to talk to you." And he's like, "All right." And he's, "What?" And you can see the look on his face where he's like, where it dawns on him. The art was amazing. The stories were great. Were incredible. More of. Eventually, we could see, Guy Gardner. Next issue, Guy Gardner wakes up and knocks himself out on the thing. But Justice League International, they were first were Justice League, and Max Lord promotes them being Justice League International, where they're on a grander stage, where they had Captain Marvel. They had Captain Atom. They had Rocket Red, because at that point, Doctor Fate was leaving the book. Captain Marvel was leaving the book to go to a series. Eventually, Black Canary kind of leaves the book, and there's a lot of change over it. But these books they were a fresh, innovative take, where we see the characters more. We see the heroes as people, as regular people. When Marvel started their stuff in the Silver Age, their heroes would argue and fight, and we'd see that kind of thing. But this was to make them more personable. We could see them. They would joke. They would, they made, they kept making jokes about Batman's Batman ears. And at one point, they're flying the ship, and Batman goes warp speed, Mr. Scott, to Mr. Miracle. And he's like, "Oh my God, Batman made a joke. Batman made it funny." He's like, "Don't push it." But it's all, the characterization. And this is honestly something we're not going to see, probably going to see ever again. Keith Giffen has recently passed away. And this kind of storytelling almost feels like in more innocent days. Before everything went with the dark and everything, the modern, and all of these complex and why they do their stories. These are just a refreshing look. And honestly, in every league that's come after it, they've had the ones where Grant Morrison ran the league, the JLA, the title became JLA, and Grant's team was the Magnificent Seven, so to speak. And then we, multiple iterations after Final Crisis, and eventually they, at Flashpoint, they had the new universe with the new Magnificent Seven, where for some reason they decided to take Martian Manhunter off the team and put Cyborg, which made no sense because the Martian Manhunter really becomes like the heart of the Justice League, the personality, the soul. And honestly, Cyborg filled the same point in the Teen Titans. In the Titans, he was the soul, the Titans, the heart, But I just want to talk about these real quickly. I'm sorry if it seemed to go as a long conversation. But if you've never read the Justice League International, you could find a trade for this first 7 books. They're worth the read. They're really enjoyable. And honestly, now that Keith Giffen has passed on, and it's been a few years, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get a facsimile copy of Justice League #1, which you can find for these books for really relatively cheap price. And if you're looking for really interesting variants and stuff, there's a variant which I don't have of Justice League #3 with a different DC logo, where it has Rocket Red holding Batman in the air with a yellow cover over a nuclear power plant. And, they were testing a new logo out at the time. But anyways, I just don't have a copy, so I can't show it to you. But I just wanted to talk a few minutes about this and share ideas. And again, I remember this when I was in high school. These were some of the best stories I had ever enjoyed of the Justice League, from before and honestly from after. you know, Giffen, and Keith Giffen and James DeMatteis, and then Kevin McGuire. They did it for a few years and had a lot of stories, and they were really enjoyable. There's some really good stuff out of there. And then when all three of them were gone, it kind of felt, you could feel the difference in the league. You could feel the difference in the team. It became more of a back to basic formula of superhero teams and less about the mystique that was in Justice League International. Anyways, I'm sorry for rambling. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you got a copy of it, or if you used to enjoy Justice League International, like to hear your comments, want to say something, let me know, and share the video with friends or not. Thank you. You have a good day. Bye.